koozie.
Get in the coos.
Do you want to open up some backup wine?
Yeah, you got it. I'm gonna use your.
Fine.
The unicorn.
The unicorn.
Mine was like the first Monday I saw Hector fucking like demanded that shit the second he walked in the door. I was like, I haven't even used it yet. Oh shit.
What's up, babe?
I forgot to download my episode of Jane the Virgin to watch.
Oh.
That's right.
I thought that was all on Netflix now.
The old episodes?
Oh, I thought it was like over and it was all on Netflix now.
That's the last season.
Still like 23 episodes left. Appreciate it.
Appreciate your face.
See, you changed it there too.
Oh, did I miss somewhere?
Yep. I could sit there and keep adding tags, but I don't really feel like it. Okay, well, we're live. I just
Okay,
test the
cool.
audio.
Let's just test the audio then.
All right, testing. Oh, my microphone's sideways. There we go.
That would, yeah, it would not work that
Well,
way.
it moves around a lot.
Yeah, that's true.
In the week.
All right, well then, this is my audio test. 1, 2, 3. Hey, adventurers, welcome to the show.
I didn't need all of that. Between our chatting, it was fine. Yeah, it seems fun.
All right, cool.
All right. There we go. So many things in the way. So hopefully this is good. Let's see.
Test it, smell it.
Well, that's the thing is there's two different beers. Like that's what I
Yeah.
think is kind of cool, and it's named after the country song that I like. Pretty good.
All right. All right, let's do it then.
Yeah. I mean, it's hella cold for being in the ice. But let me close that. All right, ready to record?
I am.
Oh, one sec. There's a little bit too much willow going on over here. I need to vacuum it again. It literally actually changes the laser. Like laser, like the cat hair. Like you ever like you don't notice, I guess, when you're playing, but like I can see the mouse jump whenever it runs over a cat hair. It's very aggravating when I'm trying to click buttons. See, this is what you get for being a tank. You're not worried about clicking heads.
No.
You're worried about
I'm just swinging
being
hammers.
near things.
Being in the vicinity of something is pretty much
Yeah,
what I'm
no.
doing.
Head clicking, much harder whenever cat hair's involved.
My job is to make the room so that other people can click heads.
All right.
What is it about the cyberpunk genre that keeps us coming back time and time again? Adventurers, gear up for an all-new episode. Greetings, adventurers, and welcome to the show. We are the Surly Nerd, your one-stop shop for geek news that might have flown under your radar over the last week. I'm your host, James, and sitting with me, as always, across from me... Ooh, God, let's redo that.
You want to redo that one?
Please
Yeah.
let's redo that.
It's the weirdest handshake. Like
It is a very
you
bizarre handshake.
Can't get the thumb around it. Yeah, you haven't botched that opening like
I
that in a
know,
while.
it's been a while. I mean,
that was like complete clustery.
yeah.
Clustery?
I've been
now I can't say
trying-
words good.
It's when I'm doing the intro in certain parts of the show, I'm trying to go less from the script, so I'm trying to make sure that I have it all memorized.
Yeah. Makes sense.
Yeah.
Sorry, got itchy eyes. I got dry eyes, y'all.
Greetings, adventurers, and welcome to the show. We are the Surly Nerd, your one-stop shop for geek news that might have flown under your radar over the last week. I'm your host, James, and sitting across from me is the producer of this fine show, Tony.
Ahoy, ahoy.
And out this week is Hector. He's off saving the world or something dramatic like that.
Oh, no, he's kind of a drama queen.
He's a little bit of a drama queen. All right, if you're new to our show, welcome. This week's Boss Room will be discussing the rebirth of the cyberpunk genre. But before that, we have the Weekly Raid, which is a recap of all the nerd news that's fit to rant about for your ears. Don't forget that you can keep connected with us through the surlynerd.com. We can follow us on all social media platforms and even donate to the show. Every penny donated goes right back into the show that we make for you every week. With all that out of the way, ladies and gentlemen, adventurers of all ages, it's time for The Prelude.
Prelude.
All right, this is The Prelude. This is what we've been doing with ourselves this week, what we've been playing, what we've been watching, what's been occupying our free time. Tony, I believe that you have things that are not Destiny related to talk about today.
Yeah, no, I played a different looter shooter.
Yeah.
Went back and played Borderlands 2.
And how's that working out for you?
It's kind of good. So it's on sale right now because they just announced Borderlands 3, so it's discount price. And I was
Did you just get Borderlands 2 or did you get the whole?
I got the Handsome Collection.
Right.
So I think it's Borderlands 2, the pre-sequel. I'm not sure if it includes Borderlands or not. Either way, and it's got the new HD texture packs and HDR shit and everything.
So it looks
for
all
the 4K
fancy.
And everything. It does look really good.
Yeah.
I have to give it that. It looks really good.
I never really thought of Borderlands as a game that needed to have an up-res just because of this style of it.
So this is the fun part about me playing Borderlands this week. I was like, oh, I've got Borderlands 2 on the 360, and I know it's backwards compatible.
Right.
I'll just literally download it and play that.
Yeah.
So I started that out, and holy shit, is it a laggy experience?
Yeah.
Like you came into the room at one point, and I was like, look at my character move, and I'm moving the thumbstick, and then my character moves, and then I move it back, and then the character. It was very bad.
There's a lot of input lag.
Yeah, it was really awful, and I don't remember it being that way originally, but that was like 10 years ago.
Right.
So I was like, well, I know it's on sale right now. I'll look at how much it was on Steam, because actually I wanted to see if I had it on Steam, because I thought I did.
Yeah.
I did not. I did not own it on Steam. And it seems like it's $60 for the whole Handsome Collection. And I was like, that seems wrong.
I think it actually went up for $7 today.
For $7?
Yeah.
Oh, it was 60.
Yeah, it went up for $7 today.
Oh, I would have bought it on PC then. Damn. So I bought it on Xbox because it was 15, which I was like, fuck yes, I'll totally not pay $60 for this game. And now that it's 7, like I can't refund it, and fuck. Why'd you have to tell me that?
I'm sorry, I had to break your heart.
Now you ruined it. You ruined my
now-
savings.
But you've been having a really good time playing it, huh?
Yeah, no, it's fun. I just wish that there was an easier way to just get to the end game fun parts instead of doing endless side questing things.
Right. I mean, that's the nature of Borderlands, though. I mean, there's a lot of
I
side
get
quests.
it. It's got that RPG element where you have to level up and you have to unlock new fun weapons. I need a little bit more new fun weapons now than waiting until I'm at the end game to have that.
Right. That's understandable. Yeah, I could see that. Well, but you know what? It's something that's not Destiny related, so there's that.
That is true.
Yeah.
It's just very similar.
That's true.
In the
But you have a type of game that you like, and that's not a bad thing. It's just nice.
No,
to
it comes
encourage-
back from like back in the day of playing Diablo and using mods to make ridiculous weapons and armor in Diablo.
Yeah, the Boba Fett mod.
Yeah, it was wonderful. I just watched your cat make a basket by throwing her toy into the air and landing it in her toy box.
How entertaining.
And now she's confused.
We should have gotten that on video. So, is there anything else you've been doing this week?
A little bit of Destiny time. I don't know. I watched Netflix. Oh, I officially finished the seasons of Stargate SG-1.
Oh, okay.
I now have to finish watching the movies that they made afterwards.
And so I guess that kind of brings us to like the elephant in the room, which is my cat's making a shit ton of noise.
They're fighting now.
But also, we can't say anything, obviously, but we did all watch Game of Thrones last night.
Yes, that was the one thing. I was asked what we were going to talk about on the show this week, and I said, well, I don't really know, except for the fact that we watched Game of Thrones, and we will talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, and so we will not talk about anything because it did just air, and we want to respect that.
It's fucking dragons,
But
man.
initial impressions, let's just do that. Because a lot of people seem to be kind of disappointed with the season opener. They were hoping for a bigger bang for their buck, and they feel like it felt a bit short.
It's the reunion episode. We've spent 7 years apart from like each other, or character-wise, so they have to, they're coming back together, and you're very much so replaying the very first episode of Game of Thrones. I mean, it's everybody showing up to Winterfell,
Yeah.
and then the chaos that ensued over the next 7 years. Like, you need to have that, like...
It's kind of almost a calm before the storm, really.
Yeah, it is. And we know there's only a few episodes left, and it's not going to be like, oh, well, they sat around, did nothing, and nothing happened. We know that's not the fucking show happens.
Like, the next several weeks are going to be kind of
But you have
balls
to
to the wall.
you have so many characters that are coming together for the first time in years. It's gonna take some time because everybody has to talk to everybody else.
Yeah, I was kind of of the opposite opinion. I was like, you know what? I was almost kind of glad for a very calm, peaceful opening because it's going to be balls.
Yeah,
out.
I didn't need crazy. I wanted crazy, but I didn't.
Yeah,
need
you
crazy.
want it. But,
I wanted it, but at the same time, I know that the
it's much like your dating life.
Yeah,
really.
the characters deserve a good refresh moment of coming together, rejoining the family, all of that stuff.
Yeah. So yeah, Game of Thrones was a lot of fun. Definitely, if you haven't watched the season opener, definitely go out and watch it. It's a blast. Over on my side of the world for the week, I don't have a ton to talk about. I know that we've been getting a lot of requests for me to do more comic book reviews, or at least recommendations for reading. It's hard to do that because I'm very picky about what I latch onto and read. I pick up a lot.
Yeah, like the things that like we know what we like, and we know that not everybody's gonna like that.
Yeah,
kind of
it's
stuff.
true. And the last recommendation I had was Die, which was the concept of people being kind of sucked into a D&D world and are gone missing from the real world for several years. That was a big recommendation. I definitely I think it's on issue 5 right now. Definitely go pick that up. And it's just hard because I do pick up a lot of various comics through the week. And I don't want to sound like an asshole about it, but I just don't want to recommend a lot of them. There's very few things.
No, dude, there's a lot of comic books I read. I have no interest in telling people about.
Like I still read, like one of the best comics on the shelf right now for mainstream comics that I'm reading is Uncanny X-Men, and it's really, really good. But it's like I don't know.
That. I feel like that's just a you thing.
I don't know if I can recommend it. No, it's one of the more highly rated comics that are out there right now.
I don't know. For me, it's me. That's me and my past history with X-Men.
I don't even know why it's called Uncanny X-Men right now because it's basically like the only mutants left are Cyclops and Wolverine. What the fuck happened? Because it's the leftovers. That's the premise, but it's working out all right. But I do have a couple of recommendations for this week, so I'll go ahead and jump into those. The first one is a more mainstream title. It is Symbiote Spider-Man. We did talk about this briefly when the news announcement came out, but the first issue came out this last week. The premise is pretty simple. It's a story. It's a limited run series that takes place during the time that Spider-Man had the symbiote, but it involves characters that he never interacted with before. Mm-hmm. In fact, the main character, as far as I can tell, main bad guy-wise, is Mysterio, and it's a lot about Mysterio being mistreated as a person and why he goes a little crazy.
Okay.
So it's a little bit of that. And of course, this is all, Peter dealing with his powers and having the symbiote and kind of what that means. And it's interesting to go back and tell a different story in that era when that era's already passed, right? Like we're past the symbiote story of Spider-Man. To go back and be able to read this story with fresh eyes, knowing what this creature is and what this creature eventually becomes is a lot of what makes this story so compelling.
Yeah, you know the ending, so you get to experience the middle in a different way.
Yeah. So, and the fact that he never, the writers even said, like, he never interacted with Mysterio while he had the symbiote. So this is kind of our love letter to that and what could have happened while he did. Now, the second title is going to be a little tough to recommend, but it's probably my favorite pick of the week for comic books. It's a brand new title from Boom Studios, and then this is probably the first time in my entire life that I've ever recommended a title from Boom Studios.
You've had some decent stuff before.
Oh, yeah, they've definitely had some decent stuff.
This is your first time.
This is my first time running to recommend it, and it's called Faithless. And like I said, it's going to be a little bit tricky to recommend it. I'll give you the byline for it. Under the headline, it says, an erotic depiction of faith, sex, and the devil in the tradition of the Divine Comedy. The story is fairly simple when it opens. A young lady is unsuccessfully trying to get herself off. And throughout the course of the first issue, we find out that she's pagan and never has seen actual magic work in the world, obviously. But she's, holding down to her faith, and her friends kind of think she's a bit of a weirdo and an outsider. And she runs into another young lady who is on the run from her boyfriend. Boyfriend's kind of a mean dude. And throughout the course of the issue, they end up hanging out, having some drinks. They go back to her place. They end up having sex. And the boyfriend entity is seen on TV afterwards committing suicide.
Okay.
And
I mean, that's a hell of an intro.
right. And so the question now is, does the main character have powers? What has awoken that in her? And like, how is it going to cause chaos throughout her life? This is only the first issue. I don't know if it's going to be any better than, what this first issue was, but it was a very interesting outsider's story. Somebody who is kind of picked on all the time. If they do have powers, what will they do with that power now that they know that they have it? I'm willing to pick it up for a few more issues and see if the story kind of, keeps being as intriguing as the first issue was. So again, it's Boom Studios. It's called Faithless. It's out right now. If you're looking for something a little bit outside your superhero genre or something a little bit weird and wacky, I'd say pick it up, give it a read. That way we can at least support it long enough to see if it's going to be good.
Yeah, no, it reminds me of like picking up random Vertigo titles years ago and being like, what the hell is this?
Yeah.
And things from Boom Studios and things from other creators being like, what the hell is this story? I don't know, but I'm gonna try it out for like a couple months.
Yeah, like I only read the headline of it when I was scrolling through my pull box stuff, and I was like, this seems weird enough that I'm gonna pick it up and give it a shot. And it did not disappoint. I can't even tell you what the final panel is. It's pretty gross, but it definitely, that final panel left me going, all right, I'm getting issue 2 at least to see how this is gonna go. All right, that's everything we have for the prelude this week. We're gonna take a small break. When we come back, we'll be going right into the weekly raid.
A little bit. It's a little bit that.
It's a little bit.
Honestly, whenever you start explaining what the plot line of this is like, oh, this is such a you comic.
it's really well written.
Like, I'm interested in it, but it was just the way you described it. It was like this was just a little bit too much like high school James story. And it's like, oh no, this is not going to be good.
No, the writing's extremely well done. Like I said, I'm gonna wait for a couple issues before I get the final verdict on it. But so far it's holding up. If nothing, it'll at least make an interesting trade, I think.
Yeah, no, there's a couple like 6-issue runs that I've bought, and like the story was fun. It's not something I would ever suggest to anybody else. Yeah. Like I have one that's about magic in London, but hipsters and. It's just, I don't know. It's this fucking weird ass series that I picked up, and the artwork was really cool.
Yeah.
And I was like, after the first issue, I was like, I don't know where the fucking plot's going on this, but all right, let's see what the fuck happens.
Yeah.
And I don't know how the fuck it ends. It just kind of kept going. I was like, oh, okay, I guess.
That's what it was like when I picked up Die. I mean, I've got this app for my pull list where I just kind of like look through what everything is, and I click yes or no, and then it saves it to my phone, and then I can go to the comic store and pick it up. And that's how I found Die. And it was like, basic premise was, kids get sucked into a D&D like universe. They are actually missing for like 10 years, come back, and like the world is fucked. Like
okay, so like that's really cool, but it was also this thing called Jumanji.
Yeah, this is much darker than Jumanji.
I'm looking forward to them doing Jumanji 3. Jumanji 2 was fun. Well,
I have not seen any of them.
It is a they kept you saw the original, right?
I saw the original. Yes.
Like when we were kids.
Yeah.
So Jumanji 2 takes place many years later. Mm-hmm. The game board figures out that like, oh, video games are a thing, so it changes its shape and it becomes
that sounds like a
it sounds like a thing that the Jumanji game would do. Yeah. And then they play the game and they get sucked into the video game world, and it's still Jumanji instead of it coming into our world. They got put into its world.
Got it right.
And I'm super looking forward to the third one. It was a lot of fun.
All right. We have
Jumanji 2 is way better than it has any right to actually be. That's the weird part about it. Like on paper you'd be like, no, I don't want
You're
this.
like, this is done.
Yeah, no, I don't want this. This is way too many years too late. And then you watch it and you're like, fuck, this is actually pretty fucking good. All right.
Let's do it.
Weekly Raid.
Hey, adventurers, welcome back to the show. All right, this is the Weekly Raid. This is our news roundup for the week. All right, kicking things off, and it's going to take over a lot of this segment, and I apologize in advance, but Star Wars Celebration was this last weekend, and that meant we got a ton of news and announcements in the Star Wars universe.
So much Star Wars.
So much Star Wars.
I honestly, I tried reading most of the Star Wars news, And I skimmed almost all of it. I was just like, don't care.
Well,
don't
that's
care.
why I pick out the good stuff to talk
Like,
about.
I found some fun stuff to talk about. There was the video game thing. That was pretty cool.
We're actually going to kick things off with a video game. So there was an announcement that EA/Respawn Entertainment are going to be releasing a game this year in November. And it's going to be called Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order. Basically one of the worst kept secrets in all the video game industry.
Yeah.
But what we do know about this is that Respawn Entertainment, most of you know them from Titanfall or more recently Apex Legends, is the ones producing this game. It is a game that canonically takes place after, I believe, after Return of the Jedi. Or no, wait, I've got this wrong. I've got that wrong. I'm sorry. It's between episode 3 and 4. My apologies.
So it's right before A New Hope.
Yeah, it's right before A New Hope, and this is when Order 66 was thrown out, and all the Jedi are being hunted down and killed, and you play a Jedi who's trying to just get by. He's just like, I'm trying to be a normal person, like, please ignore me. And
I mean, like, on the surface, like, you think like that would be fine, like, except for, you know, he does stupid magic tricks to make, like, you know, the light switch turn off and things like that, and like, you're being sneaky. You can't trust you because you're being sneaky.
So the initial trailer looks really cool. Everybody was super hyped for it. If you haven't seen it, definitely go check it out. With all of that in mind, there was a big kind of trepidation about this game because
The last couple times EA's released a Star Wars game, it's gone over wonderfully well.
Yeah, so everybody's like, well, it's an EA Star Wars game, and first off, they keep canceling them. All of the best ones that we've seen recently were all canceled. And also, this is EA, who's notorious for microtransactions, loot boxes, all of that good stuff. Now, it was announced today. Finally, Respawn came out today, like right before I got all the notes finished up, and said, there are no microtransactions, there are no loot boxes. It is just a single-player story experience, start to finish. That's what you're paying for.
See, I saw that they tweeted that out, and I immediately went, bullshit, you're EA, you're going to find a way to fuck people over.
Right. I don't know. I feel like at this point, they have to do something, just a strong single-player experience with no microtransactions and no other shit, because people have lost faith. People have lost faith in EA doing Star Wars games so much that now LucasArts exists again.
Yeah,
a company that was dead.
Well, it got disbanded because they didn't need to keep having an in-house video game company,
right?
Because everybody else was making them for them, and then they're like, "Cool, well, we don't need to have this. Everybody, you know, you're basically fired. Go fuck off and work someplace else." And now they had to get the team back together because EA fucking shit the bed so fucking hard.
Yeah, Disney was like, well, we can't do this. I don't know. I guess we should make LucasArts a thing again, right? Like, people loved those games.
Yeah, I mean, Disney's got Disney Interactive. They got their own game division stuff. They can just literally, and they just chunk into like a side section and be like, y'all work for LucasArts now. And we're watching go, cool.
Yeah, give us that LucasArts money and budget and time and all of the things.
And let us make one game great every 6 years.
Can we get a sequel to TIE Fighter? That's all I'm saying. I'm just throwing it out there. Ideas.
No, you don't need a sequel to TIE
Fighter.
No, you don't.
It's been like 20 years since we had a TIE Fighter game.
We, as a society, have moved the fuck on from the TIE Fighter game. We don't need...
No.
It would not be good. It would not be a good game.
I'd imagine it would be so beautiful to play a TIE Fighter
It would be really pretty if you really like flight sims.
Yeah. And I've never liked flight sims, but I fucking love TIE Fighter. And the story was so good.
It's just we are not there anymore. We are not there.
You're not there because all you want to play is a looter shooter.
As a
person,
if they made
the Society
a TIE Fighter
of Tony
game,
is not down for it.
If they made a new TIE Fighter game and it was a VR game, then maybe.
I don't know if I want that.
Yeah, see, you gotta change with the fucking times, and you gotta make the game just as difficult as it should be. And fucking in actual flight, you want to fucking have VR headset so you can look around and be like, "There's a star, there's a fucking thingy. I'm gonna fly over here. Pew! Oh, I'm dead."
You know, the best part of the TIE Fighter experience was when you played that original game, and I know I'm side tangenting like hell here, is that you actually understand how weak those ships are. Like, when you are actually placed in a TIE Fighter, you're like, oh, I can get hit once.
Yeah.
I'm glad there's other models of TIE Fighters that have shields and stuff, but when you get placed into a regular old TIE Fighter, you're like, well, I guess I better learn how to dodge really quick.
This is where I gotta talk to the chat for a second. It's that it says VR limits the audience. No. Actually, it would increase the VR gameplay, because if you make a fucking amazing ass Star Wars game for VR, you might actually get people to fucking buy VR headsets.
It's true.
Maybe.
It could go either way.
I think that you need to have a big push from something like Star Wars to say, this is the reason why you get into VR.
Right.
mind you, they're also going to need to like follow that up with like 6 other amazing ass titles
That is
immediately.
True. That is true.
Basically, VR. People don't realize that VR isn't just an add-on for your PlayStation or an add-on for your PC. It's a fucking whole additional console system that is failed. It's like Sega releasing the Dreamcast. It failed. Like that's what VR is at this point. Maybe we get some good games, a lot of them, to make it function, because otherwise it's just going to go down as another piece of hardware that you don't necessarily need because you can play the games without it.
Sure.
You have to have those good. You have to have good apps to get people to fucking buy the hardware.
And keep that thought in mind, because we are going to be going back to that exact subject here in just a little bit. Let's continue down this Disney train and the Star Wars train as well. Our next bit of news is about Disney Plus. So this is the Disney streaming service. We already knew about it. We've already talked about it on the show.
They announced it a long time ago. Whenever they gave us the name, because we were just calling it like I don't remember what we called it at the time.
Who knows?
It's just
Streaming
not,
Disney.
Yeah, it was not Netflix for Disney.
Right. So we got all the details about it this week, and everything about it looking pretty positive right now. First off, let's talk about the price. So the price is $6.99. Is what
$6.99 is.
It's a great buy-in price.
Yeah, that's really lower than what I thought it was going to be.
Apparently, if you have Hulu, because Hulu and ESPN is also something you can do.
They're all owned by Disney now. Anyway.
You can do a bundle package, and I think you only have to have 2 items of the 3 to bundle it.
Yeah, because a lot of people aren't going to do like ESPN.
Right. So you can do Disney and Hulu, and they're going to have a reduced rate for having those 2.
Yeah, I'm hoping like maybe $15, and you get Hulu plus Disney, and it saves you like $2 or $3.
You'd sell me right there. That
I mean,
for me.
I was wary at first because I thought the price was going to be way higher, and then they started showing all the stuff that is going to be on it, and I'm like, the price is actually pretty damn good.
Let's talk a little bit about that. They're going to have The Simpsons from the get-go.
Yeah, every episode of Simpsons.
That's bold. That's a big fuck.
Well, they've already had that on Hulu for like ages.
Right, but I mean, it's still a big move. But let's talk about the first show that's going to be coming out for it, The Mandalorian. This is Jon Favreau's solo Star Wars movie. Or Star Wars TV show.
Yeah, it's the first live-action Star Wars TV show officially, really, ever. It's going to be on Disney Plus. It's going to be... I don't know exactly the time frame it takes place during, but it is going to be about the Mandalorians and the Boba Fett's and all that stuff.
So it takes place during the rise of the First Order.
Okay.
So this is a bridge between Return of the Jedi and Episode 7? Yes. Sorry, I had to math.
Yeah, I know. I have to like stop where it's like we've gotten so many Star Wars. I'm like thinking like, wait, where does this fit within the thing? I'm just glad we're not big fans of the books or anything. So we'd be like, no, it's between this book and that book.
I've read a lot of books, but I'm not diving into the expanded universe at this time.
No.
So it's going to be an interesting concept. Now, a lot of us have had the question, well, if they're doing Disney Plus, what does this mean for Hulu? What does this mean for this other stuff? So fascinatingly enough, Disney came out and said, so what we're going to have is we're going to have like, original content like Star Wars Mandalorian. We're going to have these other Marvel spinoffs, like a Loki spinoff, the Wanda and Vision spinoff, the Scarlet Witch and Vision spinoff. These are all going to take place in Disney Plus. Are going to be more family-oriented shows. They're also going to have all of Boy Meets World, I believe. It's going to be on there.
Cool. I mean, I love me some Boy Meets World, and it's hard to... I wonder, actually, there's a couple of episodes that have been since never shown again of that series, and I wonder if they're actually going to put those back on there or
I guess we'll see. But Hulu is actually going to be what Disney considers their more adult-oriented fare. So they're still going to have, like, other... They're basically releasing in these 2 platforms. These 2 platforms are going to be coexisting. Like, Disney Plus and Hulu don't have to be separate entities. They're supposed to be kind of tied into one another.
They're cousins and stuff. Good, ladies and gentlemen, it's been many age since this has happened. A phone call during the show when our phones are supposed to be on mute and put away.
That was actually an alarm that I had set.
Alarm.
Yeah. Yeah, there it goes. It's done. Sorry. I apologize.
What the hell alarm you've set for 8 o'clock on a Monday? Feed the cats, take the trash out, something like that?
Like take a nap last week or something.
Oh, yeah, that totally makes sense why you would set an alarm a week later for that.
Right.
Make sure you're awake. Make sure you're awake for a week from now.
No, it wasn't supposed to be a repeating alarm. I just had it turn out. Never mind. Back to Disney and Hulu. So, yeah, it is kind of interesting. They're wanting to do they're still going to have their Handmaid's Tale and Castle Rock and all that stuff. It's going to be considered their adult fare. That goes on Hulu, and everything else is going to be kind of on Disney. Honestly, again, at this price point, I'll buy into it. The fact you're going to bundle it and then reduce the cost,
and all the Disney movies are being added to it. It's ridiculous.
And the Marvel movies,
and the Marvel movies, and the everything. I'm not sure that like I need to get this the day it comes out. Like, in fact, I know I don't want it the day it comes out. I'm more in the, okay, what date does The Mandalorian come out? And then I'll actually watch it.
Absolutely.
And then I'll pay the money. It's like, it's much akin to the way we treat HBO Now or HBO Go or whichever one's the correct one, because that gets confusing. I'm only going to want it on for the time that I need it on. I don't envision myself watching all of these things. But I will.
I'm going to keep my account active for a little bit longer because there's things on there that I want to watch. Like I've never watched Westworld, so like I should.
Oh yeah, no, I mean like for HBO in that case, yes. Like in fact, I haven't watched any of season 2 of Westworld. Now that we have HBO backup, I'll do that.
Yeah.
But for Disney Plus, I don't feel that like I need to have it for the entire year. I'm expecting maybe like 4 months out of the year I'll probably pay for it, and then cancel it again, and then come back in, and it's really just like a. It's hopefully it's treated the same way they treat Hulu and HBO and everything like that. You basically just say disconnect for right now, and then you can come back in, do your business, watch your shows again.
The Twitch chat's asking me how I've never watched Westworld. I would like to maybe show you someday the amount of pop culture that I have to consume on a weekly basis, and trying to fit a new show in there is sometimes very difficult. Like I've watched the first 10 episodes of The Expanse, and then I completely forgot that I was watching it. So that's how this works.
Yeah. No, it's a problem, and I honestly have been remedying that problem by just getting rid of shit that I don't want to watch anymore.
Yeah,
like I went back to watching Stargate because I fucking love Stargate. Stargate was a great show, and I just wanted to watch it again. So I just stopped watching some of the other things because I didn't need them, and I could watch them during the summer.
Sure.
I have access to the Hulus and the CBS All Accesses and all that shit. I can watch them again later. Just watch what you want right then, but also things like you watch a lot of cooking shows. I cut those out because I don't feel that is helpful towards my time of consuming all the other things.
Right.
I'd rather put on other things in the background that I can just power through, or like Stargate, rewatch something else. But that's kind of the Stargate and the Food Network shows. They're kind of the same thing.
It's figuring out where you just want to place your time.
Yeah, right? and time management is one of those things that as an adult you have to deal with, I guess.
All right, so let's go ahead and move on from Disney Plus. We got another piece of Star Wars news that came out from this weekend, and that's Marvel Comics is going to be bringing out a series of one-shot comics, and these are going to be all based around certain characters. A lot of them will probably take place before episode 7. So we'll be getting a one-shot issue called Finn. And it's going to be about his time when he was a stormtrooper and what it was like to be a janitor as a stormtrooper. I shit you not. That's probably what it's going to be. Captain Phasma is going to have one. We're going to have one for Rey. And these are just one-shots meant to kind of flush out the universe a little bit.
I am all for this, but they left one glaring hole.
What is that?
TR8R.
Oh, right. Well, I'm sure that they will get one.
I think that the character has no official name,
right?
But the fans named that stormtrooper TR8R because his one line is saying traitor, and he goes whoop 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 whoop. And it's awesome, and he needs his own fucking story.
Well, maybe if you just write to them enough, they'll be like this. I mean, fucking nobody gave a shit about Boba Fett back in the day, all right? Boba Fett was... Go back and watch the original Star Wars trilogy.
Yeah, no, he's
in it for 5 minutes, and then he gets gone into a Sarlacc pit, and that's it.
His backpack fucking goes... Pew! It's all bad.
Right, but like the fans have rallied around this character, and now Boba Fett's got like his own series of books and shit.
And the Mandalorian shit's coming out, so...
All right, let's keep down the Marvel train. We're going to switch gears over from Star Wars over to some superhero stuff. The big one being that we found out this week that I believe in June, starting in June, there's going to be a 5-issue limited series, July, based around the Invisible Woman. And you say, well, okay, but why?
Yeah.
First off, in this character's history, mind you, the Fantastic Four is the family that's really started Marvel Comics to the entity that you know today. In that time, the Invisible Woman has never had a series of her own. She has always been just the wife of Reed Richards.
Yeah. And
a bunch of people over at Marvel said, you know what, that's kind of unacceptable. She's a very compelling character who's been around a lot of weird shit. She's very intelligent. So they're going into this backstory of her actually prior to the Fantastic Four, where she actually did like espionage, like for Shield, all kinds of crazy stuff. And they really want to flesh out her character, you know, because maybe there's a Fantastic Four movie that's going to be coming around the corner.
You know, third time's the charm on that.
Third time's the charm on that one. Let's give her a little bit of backstory so she's not like a one-note character. But Sue can be a very brilliant character when she's well written. It's just that she often takes a backseat to Reed Richards, and that's kind of shameful because she was in like that ship for a reason. She wasn't just because she was Reed Richards' girlfriend. You know, she was part of the actual crew that did things.
Yeah, she's a scientist. She knows what the fuck she's good at math and shit.
Right. She's very, very brilliant. Just the problem is that when you're married to the most intelligent man in the Marvel universe, like what do you do? So it'll be really cool to kind of see her be able to break out of that, go into her backstory, and really learn about her more as a character. Because I think, if nothing else, you know, because there is a possible movie coming around.
Maybe like just weird having weird like introspective thoughts about why her power is being invisible because she has to not be shown because Reed's in charge and all this shit.
It gets
like,
really deep.
Yeah,
when you
no,
think
like I
about
started
it.
thinking about it way too hard. Like it's like brains making fire come out.
She's invisible for multiple reasons.
Yeah, no, that's cool. I don't necessarily want to pick this up because I don't really give a fuck about the Fantastic Four.
You've never been a fan.
Yeah, I've never really. I mean, I do have a thing sitting right here,
Right.
But that's
way to
more
insult
because,
them while
because but it's mostly because it's a thing.
while your thing is on the table. Way to insult them.
It's pretty heavy thing. But yeah, no, it's awesome that she's getting this story. It should have happened years ago.
Should have, absolutely.
I personally never really cared about the Fantastic Four universe, mostly because Reed Richards is a fucking dick.
Oh, he's an asshole.
And he does horrible things all the time in the justification of, I made everybody safe. And that's not how rights work.
Yeah, like you want to talk about superheroes that really border that line between superhero and supervillain. It's Reed Richards. Like it's Reed Richards and Tony Stark. Like those are the two that
of
are
them like regularly like bypass people's rights and the Bill of Rights and everything just for the notion that we are smarter than you, so we made it safe for you.
Yeah.
And that's not how this works.
Yeah. And that's a big part of what comes down to for Reed Richards. It always has been. During the original Civil War, there was this storyline where, you know, he took people that were superheroes that didn't register with the program, and he put them in another fucking dimension.
Yeah, no, he straight up put them in jail in another dimension and said, well, throwing that key away.
Yeah, and it's like, oh.
No, that's not how you do that.
Right, and everybody's like, maybe this is a bad idea. So, yeah, it'll be interesting to see Sue outside of Reed Richards, because oftentimes she's just written as almost the sidekick to him.
Honestly, I don't know why the fuck they haven't just killed off Reed Richards at this point. As a character that just doesn't fucking need to be in the Marvel Universe anymore, he's like way up there on the list.
Well, I mean, the Fantastic Four haven't been in the comics for
No,
a
I mean,
very
just
long
really
time.
like Reed, just get rid of him.
Yeah,
He's
well.
a dick. His power is he's rubber. He's fucking useless.
Yeah, I don't know. He's at the center of a lot of stories, and an argument can be made for how vital he is to the Fantastic Four as a family. But that's an entire.
All he's done is fuck up the Marvel universe over and over again. He fucking made a ship that like traveled interdimensionally to all the different fucking 600 different universes, and then oh god, he's broken so many fucking things. He's awful. He's a horrible, disgusting character who shouldn't be allowed to put him in fucking prison in another dimension. He's not allowed out. Everybody else will probably have a much better life.
I can see you're very excited for the next Fantastic Four movie.
I'm happy that maybe Jessica Alba will come back and be the Invisible Woman. That's
all right. Let's move on to something that you would be interested in. Let's move it away from all the Marvel DC stuff. Let's get into a little bit of horror talk real quick. We found out this week that Robert Englund is going to be hosting a new show on the Travel Channel, and it's going to be called The Shadows of History. And it's only going to be 6 episodes to begin with. And the idea is you take the person who played Freddy in Nightmare on Elm Street, and he's going to go to various towns and track down the story behind like a bizarre, mysterious thing that was printed in a newspaper, kind of a local legend kind of deal, like a local urban legend. And he's actually going to be like working with like scientists and detectives and kind of going into the history of the town and whatever happens in it. It's supposed to be fun. It's supposed to be a little bit weird. It's definitely not Ancient Aliens.
It's riding that fucking line though, man. It's the same thing as that there's that stupid TV show where they keep doing x-rays on this island or whatever. They keep trying to dig for the island, and they're like, there's gonna be buried treasure here somewhere. I'm like, motherfuckers, if people haven't found it over 200 years of digging up this fucking island, it's not fucking there.
Yeah.
Like I just feel like it's going to be that, and Robert Englund's very campy.
The show that you're talking about I think it's called like The Curse of Oak Island, and I only know this because when I was a kid, I was very fascinated with the legend. I had read about it in a book, and I'm like, oh, this is actually really fascinating because the idea is that you know where the treasure is, but as you dig down, there's traps that kill you on the way down. And then I heard they were making it into a TV show, and I'm like, that sounds like the stupidest TV show in the world because. Like that's not the point of the
no, dude. This was on in the background at work one day on my lunch break. So I was sitting there for like 30 minutes watching an hour-long episode of this. So I just jumped in the middle of it, and for those 30 minutes, I watched a bunch of guys talk about digging in a 20-foot area hoping to find something.
Wow, that's impressive. This is not.
And it was the most boring fucking thing in the world to me because they kept doing flashbacks to earlier conversations and then like side pans to others.
It has higher ratings than our podcast.
Oh my god! Because I would say it's because people are stupid. And that's because we're also kind of awful at our job too.
All right, so let's move on from that over to reboots and remakes. So fascinating little bit of news came out this week that Poltergeist, which just had a remake like not a year ago.
Yeah, it was the kind of the kids for kids horror.
Yeah, is getting another remake. So soon.
Okay.
So soon. This is going to be Ghostbuster syndrome all over again.
Yeah.
But this remake is actually going to be done by the Russo brothers, who a lot of people know from working on the Avengers or Captain America or Community.
Arrested Development.
So they're going to be tackling this Poltergeist remake.
Okay. I feel like there's other things I'd rather have them make than that. Like so many more things I'd rather have them make.
We're always talking on this show about how important doing kind of for kids horror is.
Yeah, but we don't know if they're going to do it for kids anymore. Like they could be like, no, we're going to do a rated R fucking ridiculous ass Poltergeist movie. I mean, like, cool. Not very on brand for you, but let's see where it goes.
Yeah.
If they're going to make a funny, silly, interesting but action-y kind of Poltergeist thing, that's an option as well.
Yeah.
I don't really feel that we need that. I don't know. Like, this is just a property. I was like,
I'm glad that we've had so much news today that you've been so excited for. You've just been like a bundle of joy this whole episode.
I am a giant squishy cloud of happiness. You can tell by the way I talk.
Yes. Okay, so we have one more little bit of news for the week, and then we'll go ahead and wrap up the weekly raid.
Yeah.
And that is we're going to be talking about the Google Stadia, that thing that you forgot about until I've just mentioned it again. So
I remember it because every time I load up Google, or I load up Steam or something like that, I'm like, oh, there's that cloud gaming thing. That's not gonna work at all. I'm sorry. It's not gonna fucking work. It's gonna be a piece of shit.
So for those of you not in the know or haven't caught up with our show or haven't been following the news, Google Stadia is Google's new video game platform that you do not have to download anything to play.
Just play it inside of Chrome.
Just play inside.
So you do have to download Chrome.
Yeah, to download Chrome. So that's
and then log into some shit.
Right. But you can buy games from inside of this platform a la Steam. You don't have to worry about the hardware requirements that you would for a normal game that you would buy off of Steam. It all runs on cloud-based architecture. And they're promising these big things like, oh, it's always going to run at 60 FPS or higher. All this other stuff that we just don't know until we see it in action.
And I'm just like, hard, no, not happening, not inside Chrome.
So what we saw when the Stadia was originally announced was that we had like, I think an Assassin's Creed game maybe, and then we had Doom Eternal. Those were the two big things.
Well, they'd been, prior to this announcement, Assassin's Creed Odyssey was given away for free if you just wanted to test out basically this service.
Yeah.
And that was the proof of concept of, getting people all over the country with different internet speeds, different PCs to play a game and see how it would function inside that. So we knew this is something they were working on for a long time. Yeah. In fact, they were giving this game away for free for you just to play in your browser. And it worked, I guess. I didn't try it because also it was Assassin's Creed and I had zero interest in playing that. So
this week, Mike Nichols, who's an Xbox executive, actually came out and said, it made a kind of a bold statement. He was basically saying something along the lines of, yes, they have a cloud infrastructure and they've got a community with having YouTube, but flat out, the reason this will not be successful is they just don't have the content.
Yeah, no, there's
now, mind
Google
you,
has zero exclusives.
Before we dive into his statement, I do want to state for the record, we do know that Microsoft is working on their own cloud-based, very similar to
Yes.
Stadia. So
we know that
they got to throw some PR punches, right? But what they effectively said was, it's great that Google has the infrastructure to do all of this, but if they don't get partners signed on, then they're fine.
I know, and that's something Microsoft had to learn whenever they were coming out with the original Xbox, that you had to go out and get those companies to make things for you. Otherwise, what's the fucking point in anybody buying your product?
Yeah.
They can get the same thing from the place they already have. So you have to justify the reason why somebody would switch over to this platform.
Yeah.
And honestly, I still see no fucking point.
Well, when we talked about it, when it was our epilogue or our Boss Room segment a few weeks back, it really was content is key, right? Like content's what sells your platform. It doesn't matter what your specs are at that point if you're not getting the newest, greatest thing. And his comments do ring very solid. I do believe in what he's saying because you do have to have great content to have a great platform. But at the same time, there's two variables that we're not thinking about. A, the fact that Microsoft is coming out with a cloud-based platform for gaming as well.
I know it's them throwing a little bit of shade on a competitor because they'll be announcing something similar very soon.
Right, but the other side of this coin is that Google did come out over the last, I think almost after this announcement, this press release came out and said, when we came and took the stage, we only had a limited amount of time to work with, and what we wanted to do was talk about the platform and how the platform operates. We didn't have time to go into every single person that we're partnered with. Now, that could either mean that they have a lot of things lined up, or that they are starting to get things lined up, or they at least are puffing out their chest to get people.
I think they're puffing out their chest, honestly, because if they had large partners going into this, they would have thrown their dick on the table from the very beginning.
Right.
I think this was the backlash that they got from the announcement. They get from people like us. We went, cool, great idea. Why the fuck would I want that whenever you have no games that are significant to your platform?
Yeah.
And I think that they heard that loud and clear, and now they're going to have to start, making up for that big mistake. They thought that they could just show up at becoming the default PC / gaming or console gaming place. If it runs Chrome, you can play whatever. Cool. But I've already got an Xbox and a PlayStation, so why would I pay you to do the thing I already have?
Right.
So you have to give us a justification. And I think that they're seeing that was most people's comments, and that they didn't have that content available, and that they quickly have to make up that ground.
Yeah.
Because come E3, if Microsoft announces their new consoles and their cloud streaming platform and shows you the exclusives, cool idea Google had. Yeah. No one's going to remember it because it will literally overshadow
just use a word that is the key word in this discussion. Consoles or platforms in this instance tend to live and die by their exclusives. For Valve, they opened up with the Orange Box. That was their exclusive. You could only get it there for a while.
Well, yeah, and then they released it on consoles. Sure. But on PC, you had to get it through them.
You had to get it through Steam. You had to buy Steam and do it. There was no Epic Game Store. There was no Google Stadia. That's where you had to go to get that. And those were the primo games of the time. Right?
Yeah, no. Whenever I first saw Portal, like the trailer for Portal, I was like, where the fuck is this? When is it coming out? I have to have this game.
Your pants were already off when you saw that trailer. Like
my boner ripped through my pants, honestly. And the day that game came out, I went and bought the Orange Box. I was like,
and a new pair of pants.
And well, honestly, I bought the new pair of pants beforehand because otherwise I'd be walking around with just a hole in my pants.
That's very true.
Weird.
That would be very uncomfortable,
especially like in the crotchal region.
Yeah, but we are in Texas, so a little breeze might be nice.
Yes, it is. It gets a little steamy down there in the neithers.
So I don't know. Like I'm saying, Google is going to live and die by their exclusives, and the question we have to ask ourselves is anybody willing to be exclusive at this point if you're not on Xbox or PlayStation?
I don't think so. So this is one of the problems that Amazon has had for a very long time they're coming with their own game engine, because they want to make their own game engine. They want to make their own games. So they're fighting that battle, and they couldn't get anybody to kind of join in with them because they wanted to do their own thing. They want to become their own gaming company. But then you have companies like EA or Activision, and they want to be on everybody's shit. They will partner with Google just because they want to have their game. They want to have their Assassin's Creed on there. The same thing as Assassin's Creed's on Steam. Assassin's Creed's on Xbox. It's on PlayStation. It's everywhere you want it to be, right? Microsoft isn't going to put their games on Google Cloud or Stadium or whatever the fuck it is.
Yeah.
They're not going to do that because they want their people to buy it on Xbox. Sony sure as hell isn't going to put fucking God of War on there. What the hell would they? Why would they do that?
Right.
They want you to buy the PlayStation. Nintendo makes no sense either. Like, also, how the fuck would you run? Would you run those games on there? It wouldn't fucking work, would it?
Yeah, there's a lot to unpack here, and I think that E3 is going to be a very important time for the Google Stadia. If they don't have some more announcements by the time E3 rolls around, it's going to be a problem.
If they don't come out and swing that giant alphabet dick that they have by saying, by the way, you didn't really have any exclusives, EA's are exclusive now, fuck you. Unless they do something like that, I said this whenever we first announced, it's like, cool, you and Hector seem to be very much like, this is going to actually change the future of gaming.
Well, it's where
and I was like,
it's where
this means nothing. It's literally going to be
It is
thrown
where
away.
the future of gaming is headed.
It is, but I don't think Google's the one that's going to bring it to us.
Right. You think it's going to be Microsoft.
I think it will be anybody that's just not Google. Google has a horrible track record, aside from naming things, stupid things all the fucking time. Every product they release lasts for about 4 years and then is completely forgotten. Like this year alone, they've gotten rid of 3 different products that they've made that you fucking forgot about.
Right.
Because they were supposed to be this big game-changing thing, and Google immediately stopped caring about it.
Right.
And that's how they treat all of their products. I don't see this having any sort of longevity. And I mean, that's one of the reasons why it is pro anybody else, because Google has the worst track record of keeping a product alive and running.
So you're saying like even Sony has a dog in this fight, basically?
Yeah, no, if Sony could, I think that they are like the long shot out of it, because when it came down to, because when I look at this as the evolution of where Xbox Live started as. So Microsoft said, pay us, we make voice chat work, we make messaging work, we make all this stuff in the background work, but you have to give us money. Sony said, we'll do it for free, and it was really awful because it was for free, because they weren't making any money off of it. The moment you found, like Microsoft said, we can make money off of this, the security, the infrastructure just went through the fucking roof. When Sony finally said they started charging for their shit when they did PlayStation Plus, their infrastructure went through the fucking roof. But they're always one step behind everybody else on these ideas. Their exclusives are great. But
they have been doing the game streaming thing for a while, actually.
So they have been. Technically, they've already been on it.
Yeah.
But it's not the most recent games, and these are much older games that are running at a much lower frame rate on literally the exact hardware it's supposed to be on. They have PlayStations sitting in a server farm running these games for you, and they just stream it to you. Like, we know this for a fact. So it's not like they're like Google is at least making new servers that can handle multiple systems all at once. Sony took all their back stock and threw it into a server farm. At least they're doing something with it, and it's not going to electronic waste, so I'm pro that as well.
That's good. Okay, so that's everything that we have for the Weekly Raid this week. We're going to take a small break. When we come back, we will be going into our final segment, the Boss Room.
My final argument there was entirely, my theory, or my thoughts behind the entire thing was, do not mention what Microsoft has planned or allude to fanboyism with that. Just say what the previous history was and what is going on right now with the competitors, and zero acknowledgement of what Microsoft is doing. So that's when I was like, I'm not even going to bring up what the fuck they're saying. I'm bringing up what Sony has. I need a beer if you wouldn't mind. There's a cold one on the second or on the shelf next to the Lone Star, please. Yep. I think that's the lefty. Yep. I just had Poncho. Time to have a lefty. El Dorado Hop Hazy IPA.
I get that you were going in it with very unbiased and
I'm trying to but I just Google's just. I mean, the fact that they're literally quietly killing off Android. Android Q is coming out, and it's not being called Android anymore. Like, they're literally dropping all of it. Like, they got rid of Inbox recently. It was a really good service. They actually, some of the best things about that, they still haven't. They said, we're going to take all the cool stuff from Inbox and put it into Gmail. They still haven't done that.
Right.
They got rid of. It seems like almost every other month, Google gets rid of one of their previous ideas and just quietly kills it off because not enough people gave a shit. And I don't think that they are investing. They're investing a fuckload of money, but I don't think they're as invested in the future of gaming.
They need something that's going to be a hit out the door, and if it's not, then they're just going to kill it.
Yeah, if they don't have their God of War, if they don't have their Halo, 2 years later, they're gonna be like, all right, cool idea, it worked. They'll sell.
We
it.
made a couple bucks off.
Yeah, they'll sell off the idea, or they'll sell off the ability to do cloud gaming like that to somebody else.
Right.
Like, let's say Magic World, Microsoft releases, or Google's there first. They have theirs. We already know that this is going to be first. Microsoft comes out with theirs, and it's great. Nobody gives a shit about the Google one. Sony says, fuck it, we'll just buy the idea from Google.
Right.
Release the idea, whatever, get the rights to the hardware, the infrastructure, and just put our games on it. Oh, look, now we have cloud gaming.
Right.
And that's one way Google will make up the money, because they temporarily invested in an idea so they could just sell it off later. Yeah. And that seems more par for the course for Google at this point. So I can't be invested in this. I do believe cloud gaming is the future. Mm-hmm. I just don't think Google's the one that's going to be doing it.
Yeah.
What are we talking about now?
We're at the boss room. We're going to talk about Cyberpunk.
Oh, yeah, Cyberpunk. I had this, like, when we first started talking about it, I had this really good idea. And I can't remember. I had this really good sentence of why I think it sticks around. I can't remember what it is.
What the name of this playlist is before I talk about it. Let me just pull it up real quick.
I'm just going to sit here and keep playing with my thing.
Yeah, I know. Great radio. This will just take 2 seconds.
No, I'm not making fun of you. I'm just going to keep playing with them. Dude, now that these are here, I constantly just fiddle with them. Ugh.
Okay, there we go. That's what I needed to know. Perfect.
All right, let's give this one a try. I mean, there are 2 separate beers. I mean, they're both kind of IPAs thing, but they work in combination pretty well.
Nice.
It's not like it's jarring, like one to the other is like, yeah, you get that sometimes when you switch from like one beer to another. No, it's kind of like they're brewed. They were brewed specifically to have that
to work with each other,
to work well together.
Yeah.
I mean, you kind of have to. They're called Poncho and Lefty. I mean, Boss Room.
Hey, adventurers, welcome back to the show. All right, this is the Boss Room. This is kind of our main talking point for the podcast, sometimes related to the news, sometimes not. This week, let me just give you a situation. This weekend, I was in the shower. And,
like you do.
Like you do. And I was listening to a soundtrack on Spotify from Fangoria magazine. It's called Holly Doom. And it's all original tracks from these bands like Gunship and Power Glove. John Carpenter actually has a track on it as well.
That guy makes a lot of, like, he makes more music now than he does for movies.
He does, absolutely. And so I was thinking about kind of synthwave music that has this kind of resurgence out of nowhere. And I started thinking about the cyberpunk aesthetic. These movies that are coming out, these television shows that are coming out that are starting to play with the universe of cyberpunk in the ways that we've never seen it before. Mm-hmm. And I've noticed that the cyberpunk is this weird genre that really comes and goes in waves. And you could say that about a lot of genres, but cyberpunk is really this thing that we as a society seem to really kind of latch onto for a very small period of time. And then we kind of let it go to the wayside for a while, and then we come back to it and we latch on and we're like, oh yeah, let's make some more TV shows and movies and all this stuff that's kind of in the world, in the realm of cyberpunk stuff. Think about things like, The Matrix. We really latched on during that period to what cyberpunk was. But before that, we had things like Neuromancer and
then Johnny, and in between, then you had Johnny Mnemonic.
Yeah, I mean that's the thing, right?
Another movie story. Yeah.
So he really likes cyberpunk. I'm sorry. So I want to talk.
I think maybe he lives actually in the future, and he's just trying to warn us.
That's entirely possible.
Keanu Reeves is. We do know he's a time traveler.
That is
because he has a phone booth that you can travel through time.
Because that's how you travel through time.
Obviously.
So I want to talk about the genre, the aesthetic. I don't want to limit this to a discussion of just movies or television shows or whatever, anything that we can think of when we talk about the cyberpunk aesthetic. Let's kind of deep dive into that. So for those of you that may not be in the know, why don't we start with the first basic question, which is, how do we actually define the cyberpunk aesthetic?
See, I was just thinking about, I was kind of thinking that myself. I was like, well, originally whenever cyberpunk kind of came out, it was the 80s looking to what the future could hold.
Right.
This idea of the sci-fi future, but grounded.
Most well known is probably William Gibson.
Yeah, but like grounded in reality sci-fi, like where you're looking like 60 years in the future, but because it came about during the 80s, everything had an 80s motif to it.
Yes.
And as we've had things like Johnny Mnemonic added its 90s, that was shortly after. But it seems recently, this iteration of Cyberpunk that we have right now is very much the 80s looking.
I guess neon noir is the best way to describe it.
It's 80s, but looking like 90 years in the future.
And I'm pretty sure I just made that term up. So if you want to,
I already forgot it, but we'll
trademark
use
that.
your
This neon noir kind of thing. It really is this. Cyberpunk is this dystopian future, usually near future, where the technology is not too far removed from what we have. But it's
stuck in a visual aesthetic of the 80s.
Yeah. And you tend to have things like, cybernetic implants as part of it. You have a lot of people who computers, like even right now, when you think about like your grandmother, you're like, my grandmother doesn't know how to use a computer. My grandfather doesn't know how to use a computer. In this era, technology is an integrated part of society. Everything lives and dies by the tech that exists. It's very dirty. It's very grungy. It's very... it's not a happy future. I mean, obviously it's dystopian, but at the same time, you get to watch these people. These mega corporations are a big part of it. Oftentimes, where you see, I guess the biggest reflection we'd have right now is probably like Marvel, Disney. Like that's a giant corporation.
Yeah, Disney's a giant corporation.
In a cyberpunk universe, they would like own a city and like basically rule under the people and things like that.
Yeah, where they can enact their law. Imagine that, giant corporations enacting laws to force people to follow the rules that they want to. That's not like what we have going on at all right now.
Right?
That's not how it happens in our America.
Yeah. So the cyberpunk aesthetic is really hard to define, but I feel like these are some of the key elements, right, that we see. Some of your go-to references, just if you're not familiar, Blade Runner is an easy, good, go-to, safe cyberpunk reference.
Yeah, no, that's the. I mean, it's kind of the granddaddy, at least for film, for cyberpunk.
Absolutely.
Comic books, probably Transmet would probably be, I guess, the best cyberpunk comic book.
Yep.
I highly recommend everybody just read that. Yeah, it's good.
And again, there's some great synth wave music that's inspired by cyberpunk. It's stuff that you would have heard in the '80s watching those kind of movies. It's things like Power Glove or Gunship.
Well, no, even let's take Stranger Things. I have to take the synth soundtrack for that as a flashback to the 80s time, so it's kind of the evolution of that sound.
Oh, that
mechanic.
Intro song is like that's
and then similarly the movie Summer of '84, entirely set in the 80s, but it has that synth soundtrack, and that
it follows as well. It follows the soundtrack to It Follows is basically a love letter to John Carpenter.
And that's more like we as a culture are going back and revisiting the synth sound. Not because it was used originally because it was very cheap.
Right.
It was very easy to get your hands on some of this hardware and make a movie score and not have to pay a lot of money to do it, which is why so many bad movies have synth soundtracks. But you can take something that initially came out of a cheapness, and then with talent and art and time, turn it into the actual instrument that it should be. It's not just something that's meant for the lower class. It can be used to help any film or television. You can elevate it with that sound, with the correct creative juices, I guess.
So I know we were kind of vague about the cyberpunk aesthetic, but if you're not familiar with it, it's definitely something you can Google, and it's be very obvious from the first 10 seconds of looking at it. You're like, that's exactly what that is. Now, that kind of brings me around to our next question, though, is, and it's going to seem like this has a fairly obvious answer, but let's try and extend that answer out a little bit.
Okay.
Why do we think that we are seeing such a resurgence of the cyberpunk genre right now?
Oh, I mean, these things go in waves. Like right now, we have way too much of the 80s coming back. Like 80s and 90s is what's in pop culture, like aesthetically,
right.
That I'm not the biggest fan of. Like I'm waiting for ska to come back. Like that's the part that I'm looking forward to. And I have heard
that's the darkest timeline.
I've heard some really good ska bands recently. Some new ska bands are coming out, and I'm like, yes. Now can we just have this last longer than like 3 years? That's
pretty sure it was 3 weeks back in the day.
No.
Oh no, I'm sorry. That was Swing. That was
Swing.
That's what happened back in the 90s. I don't know, man. There's a lot of factors to why cyberpunk could be coming back. I guess I was originally going to save this point for the end, but maybe this is a good spot to bring it up in. So the reason I wanted to talk about the rebirth of the cyberpunk aesthetic and the genre is that I have a theory. And so hear me out on this one.
Okay, I also have I think I have a similar theory to what you're about to say.
So my theory is that it's a matter of technological evolution. So when we first enter the cyberpunk era, and I'm going to use neuromancers, William Gibson's neuromancers, our jumping off point. A lot of tech was new and scary. Right? The internet really wasn't a huge thing. You had to be a nerd to the nth degree to really know what was happening in the world of computers at that point, because computers were not the things they are today. And then William Gibson got to write about cyberpunk. It was this really cool tech noir universe that everybody was like, it's super dystopian. But then we kind of lose sight of cyberpunk for a little bit. And we get things like the cyberpunk role-playing game, and there are people writing in the genre, but they're not famous people. And then The Matrix happens. And The Matrix happens at the perfect time, at a time in which the internet is becoming more prolific, is becoming something that everybody has access to, and that everybody is now connected, right? It's the very beginning, it's the birth of that. And so we can then go back to cyberpunk and go, all right, so now everybody has this tech. We're on the timeline for this dystopian future that we've been planning. What happens when everybody's connected? And we say, all right, we're going to take this to the extreme, and then literally everybody's connected, right? We're taking that metaphor, making it literal, and now we have the cyberpunk aesthetic of The Matrix. And then after The Matrix dies off, and I'm using that as just a big pop culture milestone. There's obviously more cyberpunk stuff that happens in between that. Now we move to the modern, what I call the modern era of cyberpunk. And we've got two facets to this era of cyberpunk. One of them is that we have retro noir, that term that I just coined, apparently.
You said neon noir. You can't say...
No, that's different.
Okay, so you have retro noir and neon noir.
Okay.
Now you're just making up lots of terms.
I am just making up all the terms. So we have this idea of looking to the past and playing with that what you were saying, neon noir aesthetic, where we use that 80s brand and make cyberpunk
neon
things.
Colors and chrome and
But then we also have this other era of cyberpunk that sits very comfortably next to it, which is Black Mirror. It is what probably cyberpunk would have been if the tech remained what it was.
Yeah, no, Black Mirror is obviously an evolution of...
Right, it's a natural stepping stone. It's a natural, we are going there, we just got to get there. Yeah. Whereas your kind of neon noir stuff is going to be more outlandish, more garish. It's going to be, people that do have, Google tech like strapped and molded to their face. There's a lot of transhumanism that goes on in that, where, instead of having a keyboard, you can like flick your wrist. In fact, you see this with the Marvel movies. In fact, watch any of Tony Stark's tech. That really has got its roots in cyberpunk, is a lot of what he does. And so when we talk about why we're seeing such a resurgence of it now, kind of my final statement for this is that we are really at a point in our society where we have a lot of technological integration that we didn't have back in the Matrix days. These were things that we only dreamt of in the original cyberpunk days. Because if you look at those old illustrations from like the old Cyberpunk 2020 books, it's always people that have like wires sticking out of them and like a monitor that's like melded onto their face, or things like that. But now cyberpunk's moving into this era where we, instead of technology being the outsider that we have to graft to ourselves, it's becoming a natural part of who we are. And so we take these two cyberpunk aesthetics. We still like to keep the idea in the back of our head that someday maybe we will melt a monitor to our face. But at the same time, we look at the more natural progression, which is like Black Mirror. And that's, being able to have a monitor on your wrist and just look at what the security in your house is, or something along those lines.
I totally agree with most of your points. I'd like to add to them, I guess, because I can't really disagree. I just would like to say that I believe that the periods of technological advancement kind of go in waves. There's the early adopters, and then it becomes culturally accepted, and then you get to a new wave, which is not misunderstood, and then you have early adopters, then come culturally accepted. Right now we're kind of at this technology is back to a misunderstood point because we're so interconnected. We have so many apps. There's so many things happening. So many things changing. It's like, what messaging app you're using this week? Oh, that one's not any good anymore. You have to use this one. Everything's changing so rapidly when it comes to the technology that we are facing, not just from a physical standpoint, but from an application development standpoint, that we are confused on where we're going to go next. So that adds to the cyberpunk thing of the misunderstood future.
Right.
And the misunderstood future is definitely part of cyberpunk because it's the what the future could hold versus what exists now. I think that cyberpunk also always has to go with political dissonance. That's culturally, you have to be in a place where people are insecure about what the future holds, so you imagine what the future could be. And
So you're saying that there's a lot of cyberpunk that dials into let's say the dystopian aesthetic of cyberpunk. Part of its roots really do are kind of based around this idea that right now society is bad, and so what we're going to do is we're going to take that and we're going to like escalate it to like the nth degree.
Yes.
And that's part of cyberpunk. The punk part is the rebellion, right?
Yeah, you have to have that, and that's what a lot of people forget whenever they talk about cyberpunk things. Is that this came out of people who were nerdy, but also wanted to watch the world burn because it wasn't going in the right way.
Yeah, let's dial it back history-wise, we're talking about William Gibson, we're talking about Neuromancer. You know, we have things like, you know, Reagan in office at the time, technology kind of starting to be on the rise, and a lot of those are kind of a perfect storm for, you know, what could be happening.
And that's in every time you can pretty much see every single time cyberpunk becomes in fashion again.
Okay,
that those are the steps that have happened already. It's technology becoming rapidly growing very quickly, people misunderstanding it, and a culture that is divided, and it takes those and just shows you who you could be, who the world could be through a different lens. And because generally you go for more optimistic things, but cyberpunk is one that, since it is dystopian and it's not the dystopian children's books that we've had for the past while, it is much more aggressive and dirty and bad.
Yeah,
and
I feel like
the horribleness of life.
People like who read young adult books, and I'm not trying to call anything out, but I'm saying like if you read young adult books that are dystopian books like the Hunger Games,
and I love the Hunger Games books, they're great.
Yeah, and you're like,
and
oh man,
definitely a dystopian future.
Yeah,
There's not.
Yeah, you're like, this is definitely dystopian, but I feel like people
they're not showing you truly what a dystopian future is.
But people who are like into cyberpunk are just sitting on the outside, and they're like, oh my god, Becky, like look at this dystopian future. And people who love cyberpunk are like, they're me as a 16-year-old goth kid going like, you haven't seen the worst of it, kid. Man, it's gonna get so much fucking worse.
Yeah, no, like you can see that there were roots of that in things like the Hunger Games with its dystopian future, but I don't think that the world is still quite ready for the truth of the cyberpunk future, which is I use Transmet as a good example of this. It's people have to either not care or you care too much. The world's gone into a chaotic place that doesn't make any sense, and everything in the world is awful.
Yeah, it's really complicated because, like I said, the cyberpunk aesthetic, like it's coming back into fashion. I'm seeing it, listening to this like synthwave music that's coming in, and seeing all these movies that are coming around the corner. The fact that like Blade Runner got a sequel after all these years, like would have been unheard of probably 5-10 years ago, and yet we craved going back into that universe so much. We wanted to go back into that kind of cyberpunk universe.
Honestly, it wasn't until I saw the film that I would have trusted to even go back into that.
Yeah, and I still haven't, but I'm
like
I want to.
It's very much so fits the world.
Yeah.
And
so actually that kind of brings me to my next question. And this is a little bit more of a vague thing because I don't want people who are big fans of the cyberpunk genre to get angry at me. This is a more generalization question. Let's talk about the narrative of a lot of cyberpunk stories. And I'm using this as a very general sense, and I apologize. But a lot of cyberpunk stories really do kind of revolve around the idea of the detective narrative in the cyberpunk universe. I mean, even if you play
that is one of the tropes.
Yeah, it is a trope, right? Like it is so what is it about the detective narrative that really draws us into like why do we want to see more detective stories take place in cyberpunk worlds?
It's the detective noir shit all over again. It's the having somebody who's not part of the story uncovering clues, that can spell out what's happening to the watcher or reader or whatever, to the audience, piece by piece, to uncover the whole. It is just a good way to tell a story because you go in, you're starting with your everyman is a character that doesn't know everything going on.
Right. When Decker walks in, like, we know that he's a Blade Runner, but we don't know what that means.
We've given the briefest explanation of what a Blade Runner is at the very beginning of the movie.
Yeah.
It's meant there to go and find cybernetic humans, like they're trying to pretend to be humans, and gives them a test to get rid of them.
We then take this blank slate everyman hero and get to learn the universe through him, through almost a lens of normalization.
Yeah, no.
Right?
So this is, while it's not a cyberpunk film, it is not a true detective noir story. Watch the movie Brick. Brick is the perfect explanation of why detective stories work.
Right.
It's a story about a kid in high school trying to find out about how one of his friends died. That's it. It's a detective story about that. And it's treated as exactly a detective noir story. And you discover who those characters are, that Universal, that high school, about the drug business and everything that was going on through his eyes, because he was an outsider that was not part of those groups. And it is shot perfectly as a detective noir story.
Yeah.
Cyberpunk works in that way because you're making up so much of the world. You have to have a person who doesn't necessarily fully understand it, that feels apart from it, that they can join onto, so the audience can then understand the world around
Sure.
them.
I mean, to put it in a context that everybody would understand, Neo's the blank slate, right?
Yeah.
We know that he's an average 9-to-5 office working dude who's maybe a hacker on the side, but that's not, the jargon's never thrown at you, because that's the thing about the cyberpunk universe that a lot of people get wrong, is that people, when they think about the cyberpunk aesthetic, they throw a lot of jargon and terms, and basically if you make it sound more techie, it's going to be more cyberpunk, and that's not it at all, because cyberpunk is dirty. Cyberpunk is real. It's meant to be, yes, it's sci-fi, but it's supposed to be relatable sci-fi. It's not supposed to feel so distant from where we are.
For it to make sense, you take something that exists within our world right now, and you add a slight tech term to it, and then you have the spaceophone. And you know what the fuck that is. It's a cell phone that works in space. There you fucking go. Yeah. Didn't need to explain it, and there's no jargon involved in it. You have to use the terminology that people would overall understand. Cyberpunk is not a super intellectual, high theory world. It's not.
World.
It is.
I was going to say world, maybe, but saying that there aren't great intellectual pieces that don't come out.
No,
of it
but in general, it's lowbrow storytelling. It's lowbrow art. It's not meant to be. It's not meant to be the fucking Great Gatsby.
See, I feel like people who are really into Black Mirror would disagree with you and say that that is.
I know. I think it can be. It's the same thing as our video games art. That kind of argument. All of these things can be, but overall, no. It's not. That's not the stories you're telling.
Well, I always feel that the big thing about cyberpunk is that when you think about the aesthetic, the neon noir, the big tech gadgets, those are the things that people easily go to and think about. But really, a lot of cyberpunk stories are very personal. It really is a person typically pretty down on their luck against the world, because the world's a fucked up dystopian place. And how do they try and rise and overcome adversity in a world that is basically out to get them from birth?
Yeah, no, there's a Netflix series based on the books. I wish Hector was here, because he immediately would have brought this up a long time ago. Yeah. The one where the people just keep switching bodies. Every planet they go to, every city, they just switch to a different body.
I haven't seen it, but Maniac?
No, not Maniac. Maniac is also very good. It's also not Cyberpunk.
Okay.
That's just a really fucking weird ass
Altered
series.
Carbon.
Yeah, Altered Carbon. Yes, thank you.
Yes.
I forgot it's called Altered Carbon. But that's just proof that like Cyberpunk's coming back into fashion again.
Right.
That these books did very well. They weren't that's top of the selling charts. You didn't know about them, but Netflix was able to go, fuck it, these people are liking this. Let's make a series out of it. And now they're going to be doing another series and an animated addition to Altered Carbon. So it's not like Cyberpunk's going anywhere anytime soon. I mean, fuck, we got a game coming out possibly this year.
Probably next year.
Probably next year. People keep saying like...
I think so my working theory on that one, side tangent, was that I believe the original book was Cyberpunk 2020. Yeah. I was like, that's when they're going to release the game. They're literally going to release it when the original...
It would make sense.
Yeah. So kind of...
And my mind was like, well, it's called Cyberpunk 2077, so it's coming out in 2077 because that game looks way too advanced for us right now.
That's a good point, though. Altered Carbon came out and very, very popular. People are relating to it. Black Mirror, when it finally hit Netflix, 3 years after it was airing, and I told everybody to fucking watch the show, but they wouldn't watch it because it was on fucking BBC. Finally hit the mass audience, and people loved it. People were like, oh man, Black Mirror, this is so fucking good. Let's eat some more of this up. And I think this all goes back to my original theory, where we are in such a time where things are turbulent. Technology is here at a very rapid rate. And we're trying to figure out our place in the world, in a world that seems out to get us, basically. And that's basically what Cyberpunk is. It's how do we survive in a world that seems so out to get us from the moment we step
How do you
into it.
dig out your little piece of land when all this craziness is going on around you? How do you survive in this kind of place?
And how do you rebel and be different in a society where it's all about conformity? And that's a big part of it.
Or in the world of Cyberpunk 2020, where everybody's rebelled to such a degree that it is such the normal that corporations are able to take over and
monetize off
control your rebellion.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not saying Hot Topic's going to have their own city or anything anytime soon, but they kind of did that too.
So I know that a lot of the stuff that we've been talking about with Cyberpunk, it seems very like weird or high concept. It's just that it's honestly always been one of my favorite, if not my favorite genre.
Well, you have to
It's
go
very
high
close to my
concept on this, because otherwise we're just explaining all the different stories to you.
Yeah, it's true. I'm a guy who loves to read Neuromancer once a year. Obviously, I love the original Blade Runner movie. We haven't even talked about Love, Death, Robots. So much of that.
Yeah,
is
you asked
super,
if you watched that, right? And I was like, I haven't quite finished it, but yes.
But there's so much of Love, Death, Robots that it's straight up just Cyberpunk.
Oh my god, watching Love, Death, Robots was watching a series of shorts that should all win awards all over the place.
Yeah.
But they're all in one thing, and I watched so much of it so quickly that my brain just melted. I should have paused and gave time, watched one a week.
I binge watched all of it.
Binging that kind of fucked me up for a good day and a half,
Okay.
and now I can't remember all of it.
So I guess it kind of leads us to our final question here. I know that we've been talking a lot about the aesthetic of Cyberpunk and it coming back and the reasons for it. For our listeners that may be wondering more about Cyberpunk, why don't we discuss some of our favorite Cyberpunk style things? Just recommendations, things that we love. It could be clothing, it could be music, it could be whatever.
You use the tabletop game of Cyberpunk 2020.
Mm-hmm.
I like Shadowrun. I'm
a huge Shadowrun
I think Shadowrun is actually a better game system.
No. I feel like Shadowrun's a better universe. It is not a better game system.
Well, that's what I meant by game system. It's a better universe. You're
Yes.
right. Not necessarily a better game system, but there are some PC games that in the Shadowrun world that are way easier to play than actually playing tabletop Shadowrun.
Yes.
So for video games right now, play the Shadowrun games. They're great. They're wonderful, fun time.
They'll hold you over until Cyberpunk
Yeah, I
comes
think
out.
they're on Good Old Games. You can get them.
They're on Steam too.
Okay, I'm just suggesting Good Old Games because DRM can eat my dick and so can Valve.
That's true. So yeah, Shadowrun's an excellent. I think there's 3 Shadowrun games that it came out. There's one in Germany, Hong Kong, and Seattle. Those are the 3 that came out.
I think I have 2 of them.
Yeah, and I've played through all of them, and they're very true to the source material. Like it gets you an introduction into a Cyberpunk universe and B, the Shadowrun universe. And honestly, if you enjoy the Shadowrun universe, you'll never want to go to any other Cyberpunk universe again because it's just so much fun.
Well, the thing is that Shadowrun has magic.
It's true.
And none of the other Cyberpunk stuff has magic.
Yes.
So.
Yeah, everything else is very strict technology. Cyberpunk's or
Yeah, it's
Shadowrun.
techno magic is in Shadowrun.
Yeah.
Comic books, I still say
Transmetropolitan.
Transmetropolitan is the jumping on place for you.
Mm-hmm.
It's definitely not. Most people would say it's not a Cyberpunk world or story, but it super is.
Yeah.
It super is the dystopian, or not even to the point of dystopian. It's the kind of opposite of this. It's not a utopia, but the world's gone fucking crazy and it's corporation crazy and politics are nuts, and I fucking love those comics. They're wonderful.
And surprisingly, if you're rereading it, it still holds up with current politics.
Well, it's because everything was based on Hunter S. Thompson's work, and you can read his books, and they still fucking hold up. Like that was the
I don't
entire.
think that's the reason, but yes. Anything else that you can think of? I mean, obviously, you said you loved Johnny Mnemonic. That
Yeah,
may be a
Johnny
movie.
Mnemonic. I kind of want to go back and watch it again. I don't suggest anybody else do that. That's more of probably like just me like hurting
so
myself
you
by
don't think
doing
you can
it.
recommend it?
I don't think I could recommend that. It's always the Matrix movies. Love, Death, and Robots just for amazing animation, and some of them are cyberpunk stories.
Yeah.
Altered Carbon is just a damn good kind of that detective noir story set in a kind of cyberpunk universe.
I have to recommend the original Blade Runner.
Yes. and the sequel. Both are good.
Yeah, I mean, I can't personally recommend that one.
I've seen it. It was good.
Yeah.
Like, I enjoyed it. Very much so. Like, watch it.
Yeah, let's see here. We had some great suggestions actually from our panel here, or for people for the live audience, and that is System Shock. I would say wait until they're relaunching System Shock.
Yeah,
and it should be happening.
relaunching System Shock soon.
Yeah, Deus Ex, either the original Deus Ex or honestly, Human Revolution is a great jumping off point.
I would say go with start with Human Revolution and then go to Mankind Divided.
Yeah, and then if you really like it, then go back in time and
then go back
and play the original.
Yeah, but don't just start with Deus Ex.
Yeah, starting with the original Deus Ex can be a bit rough. I mean, because it is a little bit outdated. I did want to toss a couple. I know that I've said their names a couple times, but Power Glove, Gunship, they're doing synthwave. Every single track that they're writing right now is straight up belongs in this fucking retro noir kind of universe. They're fantastic. We said Blade Runner, Love, Death, Robots. I'm trying to think of anything else that just jumps out. I honestly,
the music's not something I overly listen to, aside from like the scores of soundtracks, and the ones I mentioned earlier with the synth music aren't cyberpunk stories. They're they're using that 80s sound.
Yeah.
And putting it in a modern context.
Yeah, so there is a big rise right now of this kind of new wave of synth music, and it's all based around this, cyberpunk aesthetic, this old, 80s style synth of doing things.
It's also a simplification of because you could say, well, all techno music has synth stuff in it because it's all synth instruments.
Sure.
Yeah, but stylistically, it's not the simplification of the music that came from the 80s because you only had 3 machines and you had no money, and that's how you made a movie score.
And so, and for those of you who actually do like to read, if you have not read Neuromancer, I highly, highly recommend it because it is pretty much the great granddaddy.
It is the granddaddy of
of
all cyberpunk.
I could say go back and read Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep, which is the story that created Blade Runner. I just don't know if it's as compelling and engaging.
It's not exactly the same.
Yeah.
So that was not written as a cyberpunk story. It was written as a future sci-fi story.
Yeah.
That the film added the texture of cyberpunk before there was a texture for cyberpunk on it. It literally created what we know as the motif of the future for everything. So that's why I would say Androids does not count.
Yeah. But definitely Neuromancer.
The film does.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's everything that I have. So why did I want to talk about this? Just because Cyberpunk is cool. Like, I could talk about Cyberpunk for hours, and some of the people in our chat have talked to me about Cyberpunk for hours, and I really appreciate you putting up with my obsession with it. But
do we? All right. So there was the rumor that Lady Gaga is going to be in Cyberpunk 2077. Do you know anything about that? I haven't read any of those articles.
We haven't heard the confirmation.
I've heard a rumor, and it's like, cool. I don't know how I feel about that.
I mean, if anybody's going to be
I like Lady Gaga, so...
If anybody's going to be in the future, it's going to be her.
I just, you need a Keanu Reeves is what I'm saying. Keanu Reeves is a fucking time traveler. He's been in like 2 cyberpunk things already. Why is he not? Why is he not in this? Get on it, guys. I know you're listening to the show, fucking entire country of Poland.
So, entire country of Poland is certainly listening to us right
the
now.
entire country of Poland works for
CD Projekt
Red.
So that's everything that we have for the show this week. We just love talking about Cyberpunk. We just love the aesthetic. We love the music, everything about it. We just love talking. Yeah. And
we've been doing it for a long time now.
Doing a podcast feels like something that would be very like 80s cyberpunk kind of thing, actually, when you think about it.
Yeah, no, there was that 80s movie where the kid runs an underground radio station, which I always wanted to do. And every few years I look up how I can actually make my own radio station for like dirt cheap. That's and like
basically what we're doing. Yeah,
but now we're just doing this on the internet. And much like my radio station in real life, very few people listen to it.
And so... If anybody wanted to reach out to our little radio station,
I'm gonna say first off, go to patreon.com/thesurlynerd and become a subscriber person on that, or a Patreon, or whatever the fuck that's called.
That's literally what they're called.
Yeah, do that, and then we'll add more content so we can do that. We need to get up on that. We have a night where we discuss content. For
yes.
That thing.
So just for the people listeners of the show, I'm wrapping up a bunch of stuff in coaching and Overwatch right now. So once all these things are wrapped up, then
we can have a night where we get really drunk and explain what the fuck we're gonna do.
I'm gonna deep dive into the Patreon and come up with some really cool stuff.
Because I've come up with some stuff. I just also need other people to show up whenever I need you to make things.
Right.
So I can't be like, well, I'm gonna do this, but just be the only person making making it because it kind of sucks whenever, unless y'all really want to hear just me talking about things.
And you can,
Yeah, info@thesurlynerd.com is our email address. Do that. Facebook.com/surlynerd. Twitter's @thesurlynerd. I'm done for now. Just donate wherever the fuck you want to donate. Just send us a fucking check. I don't care.
and we really appreciate all of our listeners who tune in every week. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, want to tell us what your favorite Cyberpunk stuff are, please let us know. Give us recommendations. Give us recommendations on your favorite Cyberpunk stuff.
You're the one with a fucking English degree. What is it? Is or are?
But until next week, for Tony, this is James.
For James, is Tony.
Adventures, good night.
And good game. Now I don't know. Is or are? What some of your favorite Cyberpunk stuff is?
It's
So what some of your favorite Cyberpunk stuff are? You said are, and I was like, no, I'm pretty sure it is.
no, it is.
Okay, you said are, and I was like, no, it's
because it sounds better saying are, but it actually grammatically is.
Yeah, ours for plural is. So it's what some of your favorite. So favorite could be more. It could be plural.
What we're saying is it could probably go either way.
Yeah. This is the reason the English language is fucking stupid, all right?
It really is.
Because I regularly, like about once a week, stop when I hear somebody saying something. It's like, that's not how that whole thing goes. That sentence is wrong. Or even I read something and somebody doesn't pluralize something that obviously needs to be pluralized. It drives me fucking crazy. Like, put a fucking S on it. It's not hard. It's one more fucking letter. It's not gonna kill your tweet, bitch. Is what I'm saying, all right? Get rid of the hand emojis all the time and put a fucking S on it.
All right, guys. Thank you for tuning in. We really appreciate it. I'm going to go make some fucking chili dogs.
Chili dogs. Nice. I want some chili dogs. Oh, yeah. You just click this.